Let me get all this stuff up. Can you eat it? Mister, I'm late for my speech.
I wasn't late.
I was on time. Come on, you can do it. There you go. So this is the kind of agenda of what's going on today. I guess I should get out of that. A little bit about, I guess, who I am. Tom told me to put in the silly video thing that I'm going to just go right by. A little bit about types of threat in general. So this is kind of to walk over the threat landscape that you can think about when you're looking at things, whether it's an app you're securing, whether it's the environment, whether it's physical, any of that. Just corporate. What types of threat will you be evolved into? Why do testing? And then some of the fun stuff that you can do if you're actually going and do some of these tests. There's a lot of companies that are starting to have teams internal that do pen testing, that do AppSec, that do decent security work, and more of the aggressive and proactive type work. This is kind of the next phase of having red teams inside of your organization that have multidisciplinary attacks that understand all of these different facets, everything from physical all the way to electronic, inherent, social, those types of things. So that's kind of one of the things we want to be able to arm you with is a lot of the tools that you've seen or heard or used before can be used miniaturized, can be used very effectively, very, very quickly. So instead of waiting 7 hours and playing with a web app all day, walk into the place, stuff a USB drive in, get all the passwords you need, and leave in 2 minutes. Then go touch it from the outside. Have as much fun as you want. But go to your client site and go to the bathroom. Watch how many computers you get exposed to. That's the special I love me side. My ass was seen on TV, apparently, just because they did a show about us and doing some of these things. One of them broke into a car dealership, showed them how to take $200 million worth of cars in a night. The part that they didn't get was they always thought the cars were their real assets, and it's not. Like $200 million is nothing in comparison to all the movie stars, all the diplomats, all the sheiks, all these other people that have bought cars, and they have all of their bank account information sitting on site. Whoops. You have all the information on damn near every bank that's worth anything, and a lot of bank accounts. And then some other jewelry stores, we did the same thing. Again, we stole hundreds of $millions worth of jewels, but it was nothing in comparison to the client records. And being able to trash their brand, that was the best thing you could do to kill their company. I mean, you can hack a web app all day and it'll suck and people will be angry and their site will get defaced, or they'll pull out some information and say, oh, we lost user accounts. When you actually, do you guys know what that is?
It's an advertisement.
Yeah, I wish. That is the SP config from U3 drives. Have you played with that before? So we'll talk about that in a little bit, but that's one of the programs that you can use to program a U3 drive so that when you're on site, you can install a hacksaw and make backdoors and do all that stuff in about 40 seconds. I'm not playing that. Threats. So these are general types of threats and environments. You can look at this from anything you look at. And a lot of thing with red team testing is there's significant amounts of methodology to it. And it's really similar to anything else that you can test. It's really similar to testing a web app. It's similar to testing a network app. It's similar to testing lots of things, right? There's a strong methodology. You have to dig, get all your information. You have to be able to find what you're going to attack, effectively execute that attack, and materialize some sort of access and go back into information digging. With these are different types of threats that you're going to be looking at within the environment. Now, these threats, again, can come up kind of anywhere, right? Your general idea of physical threat, which I think that's Starbucks cards that vendors have given me to get into buildings. And we were talking about this last night. I wonder if that makes them liable for me breaking in. And I'm like, so thanks for the Starbucks card, click.
Sensic is in trouble.
Sensic's dead because they gave me Starbucks cards. But Starbucks cards are kind of the best because they're just the right type of plastic. So physically, right, you can get into lots of different things. You can get into apps physically. You can get into people. You can get into buildings. You can get into all these different types of things physically. Good idea of that is somebody couldn't hack the web server from the outside, so they went in and stole it. Yeah. Awesome. Good job. I'm impatient. right? If I can't hack it from the outside, I'm stealing it. I'm gonna walk in and take it. Because then I can work on it at home, I can hang out, I can go get like a sandwich, I don't have to stress out. I can do it a hell of a lot faster, I can launch millions of boxes against the thing. I can just wait for it to outdate on its patches. I mean, that's great. Electronic attacks. Well, you guys have been talking about that type of stuff quite a bit between electronic and inherent threats. There's lots of different things you can do to manipulate electronics in environments, whether it's manipulating cameras, hacking RFID systems, being able to compromise applications or whatever else. A lot of times people use this now for more corporate espionage and intelligence. So one of those was, we were running around at a company that was a big gaming company in California, like super big that, you know. And all of a sudden, they started getting slammed with about 1 gig a second worth of DNS traffic. That's a lot of traffic. Like, a lot of people think about that traffic and think about in and out, but 1 gig a second is a hell of a lot of traffic. Actually, it was so big that when we found out that these people were getting attacked that way and we started tracing the sources, it was from one telco provider in Turkey. And the telco provider, oddly enough, after doing a little bit more forensics in it, had kind of let us out to see what kind of attack it was. Well, we did some interviews with the client and said, well, why would some telco provider over there be attacking you? And they're like, I don't know. Like, I don't have any idea of that, but we're losing millions of dollars because of it. Because they made all of their revenue from the online game. The game isn't up, they don't make any money. So one of the things we found is that the code that they use in the back end of the game, the graphics engine of the game, was actually owned by someone else, and they were licensing it. And in that license, there's a real specific line in the SLA that said, if it's not available online, we can buy the code back. Well, the game got successful, and they wanted their code back. So this is how they did it. They hired a whole bunch of people in Turkey. They tripled the amount of bandwidth of the telecom. Not of a provider, not getting it. They tripled the telecom's bandwidth. They sat 25 people on site, and they hammered on this thing constantly, day and night. So what does that cost? Look at how much an attack like that would cost somebody, right? It'll cost you 30 grand to lose $1 million. That's great. If I really want something back, I mean, Tom and I were talking about clients not paying. There you go. You can tell your buddy about that. So malfunction and inherent threats. This is where a lot of AppSec lives, right? Is you build an app, it has a functionality, it is supposed to do something, but you haven't windowed it to do something effectively, you windowed it to just do it, right? That's the famous part of an application developer is it works. That's why they don't want you security guys to come in because you make it not work. Right? I mean, has anyone had that experience before? They tell somebody to lock down an app and they're like, it's going to break it? Yeah. All right. So you guys have been talking about all these great ways to fill and stop those holes. One of the good examples of those holes actually getting to someone. So I like to use examples that aren't this ephemera, like TJ Maxx lost 90 million, blah, 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 blah. Who cares? Seriously, they got mine. I'm fine. I'm here. I didn't lose any money. It sucks, but it doesn't do anything. This happened because you could do GET requests to the Department of Corrections, and the only way that they found out about it was because the person who did it wrote a man file. Then somebody was looking on how to get records, saw his man file to do it, and they had just gotten out of that jail. So they did it. It was a good man file. And then they got all the information of all the officers that worked in the jail. Then they started calling their friends that were getting out and said, hey man, if you give me like $500, I'll give you that dude who slapped you around's address. Okay, this is now when AppSec becomes physically bad, right? These are the types of examples that the developer here, like, hey, look, you're responsible for like 6 officers dying last night because you didn't lock that down. That's a lot more real than my personal information is gone. Guess what? 300 million people get compromised already. None of your information's personal anymore. You know that. I mean, really, it's not. It's everywhere. Like anyone in this room probably has their stuff pilfered all over the internet. Except for you, because it's in my backpack. But So you know, I want to see these things get a little bit more realistic. And then you can start looking into other aspects like social engineering, which I don't know why that's all the way up at the top. But social engineering isn't just calling and asking for your password. Social engineering isn't being Kevin Mitnick and typing 1 into an asterisk server to get admin. That's dumb. I mean, it isn't. That's not what it is. Social engineering is a repeatable process that you can use to manipulate people into divulging information, leaking information. Now, that could mean creating a spy in the organization, which is real easy to do, especially now with all the banking problems. You go to a developer who's making 45 grand a year, or a database administrator, right, who's not getting paid well, who's a junior, who's just doing field entry, and you start giving them 20 bucks to give them like random tips and information to say, hey, how do you guys do something like this? And have them start working with you to fix your applications because he has experience, he's worked in that environment. And then the more you pay him, the more information you can get. And then one day, pay him a whole bunch of money and say, give me this. Well, after 3 or 4 months, they start relying on that money coming in. So they have to take it. And it's really easy to entrap people. All you guys who have done it or either studied it or been taught on how to do it, it's real easy. And especially right now with all the economic crisis that's going on, it's real fun to make. But you can also do things like your client-side attacks. You can embed emails. You can do all of your fun application attacks to use for social engineering. I mean, cross-site scripting and cross-framing and things like that, that's great. Why not? You can advertise for me. You can log in for me. I wish I had the bat. That was a bad shot. I got 2. So now I'm like ready. So one of the best examples that I have for social engineering is this guy stole $28 million of diamonds because he was giving the ladies at the front desk chocolate every morning. I mean, like, that's cool. That's cool. Like, I can do a SQL injection and dump a database, but you give somebody a friggin' chocolate and you get 120,000 carats of diamonds, that's neat.
It was like all those idiots that gave out passwords for chocolate bars in the street.
Exactly. So it's unbelievable, right? So these types of attacks, when you look at all these, you can take all the knowledge that you have, you can take this kind of multidisciplinary approach and start looking at your environment from the style of an attacker, not just from a AppSec tester or a physical engineer, all those things. You guys all have the facilities to understand all these areas. All right, fine. Just kill it and I'll deal with it later. So you have the ability to look at all these different things. I urge everyone to kind of open their mind when they're looking at security in their environment and try not to be so focused. Because what ends up happening is you create a shield that's this thick and this big, and you get attacked from this way. So what happens? So the reason I wanted to talk about this here is sort of, what's red teaming in general, and why would you want to do it, right? My favorite analogy to that, even though it shows up bad on the screen, is how do you know you can put up a fight if you can't take a punch? If you've never gotten hit, how can you say that you could withstand it? There's lots of people, oh, well, I had a pen test. Well, did the pen test keep everything in scope? Was it, I tested the application. Well, did they test the network in front of it? Did they test the network behind it? Did they test all the hosts involved in that? Did they test the people who admin it? I mean, and when I do an app test, I'm going to send emails to the developers and why? Now I can have all the code. I don't even need to touch the app. Like, if you want to see if I can change the application, oh, trust me, there's a lot more ways than just www.mycheesyapplication.com, right? So a lot of people get lulled into this kind of false sense of security when they say, I'm testing a specific piece. Red team testing, essentially, military terms of tiger teams and red teams and things like that. It's essentially a full scope test, right? It's how open can I get my mind to attack this environment to be sure that the assets I'm trying to protect are secure. Process for red teaming. Wow, that shows up terrible too. I'm sorry. just like anything else, just like pen testing, just like application security, you can have a very defined process, right? You gather information, you assess what vulnerabilities there are, you select a target within it. After you select that, you start planning for the attack, and then you execute the attack, and once you've executed the attack, you start over again. Okay, there's a lot of people that do this type of work or say that they do this type of work. IBMers in the room, I'm sorry, I'm going to make fun of you. You suck at it. Why? Because there is no process. It's totally based on the tester, and there's no methodology behind it. And there's a lot of people that claim that they can do it, and then they go, oh yeah, we're going to do a red team test, and what happens? 6 out of my 7 facilities, somebody walked in the smoking section. Wow. That's one aspect for attack. When you're testing, you want to try and get as much as you can, as many times as you can. So process of doing those attacks, again, we kind of talk about the information gathering, being able to use methods to research the environment. And I had this talk a couple days ago, and I was talking about it last night. I spend more time on information gathering and testing than I do in testing, ever, in any environment. Because there's a lot of people that go out and they just launch all their tools and their attacks and create a billion amounts of traffic and all this other stuff, and it's useless because half the things that they're launching aren't even for that system, aren't even for the service, aren't even close to the service level that they're trying to look at. The same thing goes for these types of attacks. I mean, the more information that you get, the more pinpointed and more executed your attacks are going to be. I mean, because when you're looking at it, the attacker has all the time in the world to profile you. If you're just looking at it in a period of a test and saying, oh, well, my project plan says that we have to have this done in 10 days, I only have 2 days to do information gathering. So get good information. Once you're able to do that, you're able to really stave off in vulnerability assessment of any of these types of vulnerabilities, whether it's electronic, whether it's physical, whether it's inherent, whether it's social. You can really pinpoint those, so vulnerability assessment is real quick. Yes, that's there. Great. You usually don't even have to run tools if you do enough information gathering, right? I don't have to figure out what vulnerabilities are on, an Apache if I have the entire version. I can look that up. I don't need a scanner to go run traffic against the box. Plan for it, execute the attack. Always get in, get out. The big problem that I see with a lot of testing in all aspects, whether it's web, physical, red team, any of that stuff, is that people get in and then they want to hang out while they're in forever. Why? You've materialized exactly what you're looking for. I can get in. Show someone that you can get access to some piece of data and then try and do it again. Because you want to see multiple ways in. You don't want to just see one way in, right? You want to try and get the whole canvas that you can when you're doing any of that testing. When you're looking at attacking corporate environments, obviously you can have different types of attacks, right? So you can have the whole external attack, right? If I'm going to touch your web app externally, but I can also do it internally. I can do it directly by actually putting traffic against it, or I can do it indirectly by monitoring traffic to it and being passive. Right? I can look at how it's interacting in proxy and do things like that that aren't going to get picked up. So I think also in a lot of different types of attacks, you'll see that people will only choose one venue for attack. Right? I am only going from the outside to your external box that sits on the web, and my scope is so narrow, it's just www in this little box underneath it, even though it has a database and 5 other things that connect to it on the outside, just this little windowed app, and only touch it from the outside and only run a web attack against it. How does that show you anything of security? I mean, really, how does it really show that app is secure? I mean, I know when Tom was just talking, he was talking about blended approaches, right? Of being able to do automated code analysis and manual review and testing and being able to look at scanners and take all of those and put it together. Well, then you're looking at multiple venues, right? You have an external direct, you have external indirect, you have internal indirect, you have internal and direct testing. So now you can actually get a true view of what's going on in that environment. Now that could be for a single application or that could be for the entire company. Does that make sense? Things like being able to do environment manipulation. So if I wanted to get into a small office that was inside of a large office building, I could pull the fire alarm, cause chaos, incite a riot, randomly just run through shooting a gun off. I mean, you can do all sorts of really exotic stuff to move people and get them out of your way when you are focused in what you're doing and attacking. You can do the same thing. I mean, you consider more exotic attacks, like you can send out mailers, and instead of doing a DDoS, you just send out like a free go to this website type thing to 1 billion people, and then they DOS the site for you, just with real traffic. So what I want to talk about now is a little bit of the tools, right? And it's all stuff that you guys have probably seen. So some online tools. Have any of you guys heard of Maltego before? So it's really, really neat. Rolof's a good friend of mine, and we work together quite a bit. And that tool does some pretty wild stuff. Being able to run transforms against everything from, like you see Tom Brennan's name, and all the different sites that he's linked to, and all of his different email addresses, whether it's personal or professional. And as you start going down the tree, there's phone numbers, there how he links to OWASP, there's ways that he's listed on domains, there's addresses, physical locations, there's net blocks that either have his name that's attached to it or other things. So as you start looking through these, you can put in API keys. You can go and get a Technorati API key if you have the old Google API keys, which I still hold on to mine. You can put those in there, and you can start querying. Everything's really, really fast, and you can make big logical maps of how this stuff puts together. I feel like sexy now. That's great. I'd like to do a show. Yeah, whatever you say. But this is a great place to consolidate and string information because you will mine tons of information this way, and you can start putting together a graphical view of how that information interacts. So maybe when I'm looking at an application or I'm looking at a physical environment, I can start taking all the names of the people that I've been able to find in that environment. I can start taking phrases like, Com plus, I can take phrases like J2E, I can take all these different types of code phrases, I can put all their names together, and I can start figuring out who is the developer of this application, right? How much information do you think you could get if you could find out who the developer of a specific application that you're testing is? How many times do you think that they've put little bug fixes out there to the world, and how many times has it always been the application that they're working on right then? You'll probably find more backdoors to applications that way than you will ever testing it. Make sense? What's that? Well, yeah, you'll know what desk to go to when you walk in. MetaGoofil, have you guys played with that? So while you're in Maltego, you can also pull out a whole bunch of documents that are related to that. So after you find your little coder's name, you can go out and look for documents that he or she may have created, and then open up those documents and try and extract the metadata from it. 9 times out of 10, you'll find their username. Like 2 times out of 10, you'll find their password in it. So again, oh yeah, I mean, you'll find every edit, you'll find who they stole the document from so they can make a pretty deliverable for their boss and what that old document said. You'll probably end up getting 3 or 4 different types of client informations that could lead you to rooting an app or rooting the environment without ever touching them. And this is all just because you're doing solid information gathering. There's a whole bunch of other online tools if you want to start assessing the outside of the environment and assessing what kind of data is out there. Cleaves is awesome to do external profiling. All these are great just because when you look at it, if it's not your box doing it, then it's a hell of a lot less to have the IDS and ADS pick up on. So central ops, network profiling, Robotex is kind of an old version of where central ops was for a while and server sniff is. Server sniff is awesome because it does a lot of different profiling on the apps that are way better than fingerprinting because it takes history over time and can see any updates that have happened, can tell you when it went down, when it came back up. Netcraft, you guys are used in domain tools, and my favorite is MySpace, Friendster, and Twitter. Because if I have your developer's name, I can find out everything about their life and attack them. Yes. Well, you can use that. You can also use everything that they've been posting to make word lists because you know that the developer's access is going to be great to have, and being able to look a little bit closer into their personal life will give you a hell of a brute force dictionary. It's useless to run 4 million passwords when you only probably have to run 5,000 and do a couple transforms against it. When you go on site, now in this, some of the testing, again, well, all right, we can't get the server from the outside, let's get it from the inside. Boot root's great, sysrack vulnerability. Have you guys ever used that? If you haven't, it's a real fun CD. You just pop it in, brings you right to root. You just hit the sysrack key. So there's real easy ways to get root that way. If that doesn't work, off-crack live, wonderful way to let an environment show you what passwords are in it. It's pretty easy to dump a CD in, let it auto run, or reboot the CD and let that start going, because it'll work automatically. You can get 10 of them, put them in your pocket, walk through a row of developers when they're at lunch, and all of a sudden you're going to have all of the developer information. You're going to have all of their passwords, and most likely they have remote access to that box. You guys, I'm sure, have used Helix and Backtrack before. Again, huge amounts of toolkits that you guys have also been talking about, and lots of these different things. A lot of developers are here. Great way to provide centralized utilities. I have a USB key that is also a hidden camera, that is also a stereo microphone, that also has all of my images that are built on it. That's all I need when I walk into an environment. That's it. I will never, ever need anything else. I don't need a machine, because I'll find one that works good. That's another agent that I made. We'll talk about that too. So that was one of the core agents that I was putting into U3 keys to auto-install a core agent to have it talk back to a central utility. Core's great because they're starting to do some really neat stuff on the web side, being able to do automated injection and being able to actually install agents over doing injection instead of just doing this plain old, I dumped your database. Why not have root and take everything opposed to just taking the database? Or just being able to do gets, or just trying to be able to do outputs into forms. Why not have everything? So I applaud them for transitioning and actually looking at things from the network level, the web level, as well as doing the client side level. Because again, when we're looking at trying to test these things, it's not just the front door. It's the front door, the side door, the back door, whether I can send client-side email attacking and embed an agent into a Word document that is affixed to some coder that I found out through my information gathering on a forum, and then I go, oh, hey, you just download this. And then they download it and they install it into their app because their app's broken. Make yourself look like a genius on some of the boards. It's pretty easy. They'll come to you for answers, and it doesn't take a lot of setup time. Then send them some things. What's that? What are you talking about? 2. It's called a license. They expire. But that's cool. You guys used this before? Always fun? It's the easiest way to get into a Windows box if you can carry around a FireWire card, boot up Helix, connect your laptop to it, bounce it. So this is one that's really, really fun. And Tom and I talked about this a while ago, and we made a couple of those drives. And it's really, really dangerous because have you guys ever played with U3 drives and being able to like turn them into CD-ROMs? So there's a few different images out there that you can use to actually ISO against the U3 drives themselves. Once you do that, if you put it in an XP machine, it'll show up as a CD-ROM. Well, CD-ROMs and XP are great because most corporate environments don't turn off auto run. So now you can batch pulling out any information you want. You can pull out your MS cache. You can pull out all the different SAM files. You can pull out all of their internet history. You can pull out, the Sophia exe that you were talking about for the VeriSign. You can pull out all sorts of different great information. You can also put stuff in, like using Hacksaw, which will actually make some subs to the USB interface. So then after that, any time that something's going to get plugged in over USB, it'll start extracting that data. It'll run a job to package the data and then send it out to your Gmail account which is really convenient because now all you need to do is just kind of run around and plug in USB keys and go home and read your email, and you get all their data.
Just don't be like PDP and have all your estimates.
Exactly. So it's a real functional way to get into an environment when you're walking through. And again, you know, since you've been able to go ahead and access where all the developers are, you know who they are, you know exactly what box to go to, just drop a USB key into it. I mean, you can take your chain at random, put hundreds of them outside, and just see how much you can get. But why not do a directed attack and actually go in and put it in the dev guy's box? You can also use that to make tunnels. I make VNC shells. We'll package up Metasploit exploits and things like that so that we can make remote shell connections back so that if I can't get into it, again, I'll sit from their box and get into it, and I'm sure they have access. I love this little keylogger. It's great. If you guys have never used Elite Keylogger, it's one of the only ones that almost all the virus companies do not detect on. I mean, they don't. They pay to make sure that they don't. So it's excellent to use when you're in any of the environments. Plus, you get really neat things like you can make full remote control sessions over H2P. You can be able to generate different keys for it. And you can continue to kind of manipulate that entire environment. And you can start hiding pieces of their desktop. You can start hiding all the logs. You can have it auto log and actually go real time. So there's real time keylog viewers and things like that. And then finally, being able to make a cheap leave behind is always good. So when you're doing any of this testing, again, when I say get in, get out, well, you can get in. You could be walking in, slamming USB sticks into something. It'll take you 5 minutes, and you'll root the whole environment. Then when you're done, go find an empty conference room. Dump a little WRT and put Metasploit on it, and have it call home to you. Boy, is it really fun to have a machine sitting in their network all day and all night. You want to test an app from the inside? There is no better way to do it than being inside. And then finally, there's all sorts of other types of fun toys. I was going to put a FlexiSpy one up there, but for some reason it didn't get in. Have you guys used FlexiSpy at all? So go to the website, flexispy.com, and it makes images for your cell phone. So you can take a cell phone, you can say what model number it is. So if you know after you're doing your intel gathering that your developer or someone in their staff has a particular model of cell phone, or if they have a corporate standard, you can say, give me an image for this, and I want it to map back to this number. After you install that image on the cell phone, so you'll take it, it takes about 3 minutes to install. If you have a laptop with you, you can go in, swipe their cell phone from somewhere, whether it's inside, outside, you see them at a coffee shop, dump this on their cell phone goes back to normal, makes a base image underneath it. And then after you've done that, you can now log into the phone, you can read all their SMS messages, you can listen in actively on calls as well as log and record calls. How beneficial would that be to your app testing if you could listen to what they talk about during the day on their phone? It'd be neat.
What is that called?
FlexiSpy. Also being able to leave things like pen cams, stuff like that on people's desks. They're great leave behinds, right? If I can have full video, if I can have full audio. You can also script some of these to call home over wireless. Some of them have wireless connections in them. And then speaking of cell phones, if you want no one to have cell phone signal, there's ways to do that too. And boy, is that effective when there's a problem and all of a sudden their phone goes out. Well, and everything else that's wireless in the area, depending on how big a one you get. But these are all different types of ways that, you know, not only are you going to test this front door, but now you're going to attack the company, now you're going to attack this application like an attacker would. Because attackers don't stop, ever, right? If it's their job to get in, they get in. Your boy who took the server, he couldn't get in from the outside, so he took it. So I kind of wanted to wrap this just by saying that all of these different methods that you're using right now to test front doors and back doors and code themselves, don't leave the simple stuff out, because the more advanced our society gets, and we talked about this a ton last night, the more advanced and high tech that we get, the low tech attacks work every time. The more things that you're looking at in these little pinpointed views of technology are starting to be things that everybody protects against, and they're missing the glaring holes like, hey, we spent $1 million trying to do all this code security and everything else, but somebody walked in the front door and stole it. Suck, you know? Whoops, we should have locked the door. So just try and keep some of that stuff in mind, or you know, your employees that are coders that are out there posting your code in forums. Look for it. There's way easier to get compromised that way than it is trying to pound the application day and night to find some little tiny hole. You'll find it by Googling for your application and taking pieces of your code and just dropping them into Google and seeing what's out there. You'll find matches. Trust me, I find them on every engagement. What's that?
Or employee email address.
Oh yeah. So anyway, that's I'll stop preaching to you guys, but that's kind of my my take on this is don't lose sight of what's in front of you.
5 minutes.
Oh, I'm done. High five. So there. You guys have any questions or anything, or you're like, damn, you didn't talk about injection. Screw this guy.
Yeah.
What's up?
How do you deal with clients that consider a pen test only like a CNA? Like, we just want this 853A.
Well,
and that's
it's
our
not a pen test, right? You don't penetrate.
Right. But when their CISO is saying
I know.
all we have to do to comply, how do you deal with those clients?
It depends on who they are. Most of the time, the way I deal with those clients personally is I try and attack what they value, not necessarily what they have to do, right?
Say before you even start.
Exactly. No. Socially, I attack what they value, right? So it's like, you know, they tell me, oh, I only have to do this standard because this is our corporate policy and blah, blah, blah. All right. Well, here's a method that you could use to attack you, and here's what it would do to the company. And when I say do to the company, I mean if a company is a brand value company, right, like a luxury goods provider or something like that, here's how I can affect your brand. And this isn't going to cover this whole how I affected your brand, right? So I'll try and make those types of connections to them that are well outside of electronics and kind of down to the root of their business to scare them into it or whatever. But I'll also make some of the connections out to, you know, like I was talking about with this, is you are focusing on testing one venue of attack, and if you're concerned about checking a box, we'll do it that way. But if you're concerned about protecting the asset, you have to say, we've identified 9 other ways that you can attack it aside from this one. So really, this test is covering 10% of your landscape. But that's an awesome question. I run into it constantly.
The other thing you can do is when you do your pen test, you wait until I have the pen test. And the key thing that you do is you profile everybody in Google. Make sure you add that to the report. Make sure whoever you're doing the report is in all this profiled information. And say, well, they can also break it into network, doing, you know, going the front door, posting it to you, to show how easy it is.
Just one other thing, never underestimate either the intelligence or the stupidity of a CISO, right? So just recently, you know, I'm a corporate guy. And just recently I had some external pen testers come in, you know, and they did the perimeter like we do annually, right? And I usually include social engineering, and this time I was specifically instructed not to do that. You know, and I'm thinking this is a huge gap, you know, and I'm arguing with the CISO, and you know, I'm going back and forth, and it comes out, he's got another group that's focusing on social engineering the company that I'm hiring. So never underestimate either the stupidity or the intelligence of the folks around this, because they're maybe in the plans.
Good intel. He had one of the new.
Yeah, I was just curious, when you bring these results to your client, you say so-and-so's doing this, we found this out. What do they say when you do this comprehensive test?
They actually fix it.
Do they?
They actually fix it. I'll tell you what, I've been doing this for now like 15 years, and I've never found anything that actually makes a client fix something except for this. Most of the time, as any of you know who do testing, they look at the big report. It's a big giant report. They have all sorts of screenshots and whatever else in it, depending on who and how they tested it. And they look at it and they're like, wow, that's comprehensive. And it's done. That's it. Your test is done. But when you start to paint this picture of a real life attack, it's way different. They connect to it very psychosomatically, right? It's built more for testing people in a way that's psychologically congruent than it is electronically congruent, right? So when you're touching them that way and you're taking hey, look, here's a video of me walking through, shoving USB keys into stuff and doing this, and I'm the attacker. I'm sitting right in front of you. It's real. You know, it makes it real, whereas you can refute a lot of this. Oh, well, this code that's right here isn't the way it's supposed to be, which is right here, so you need to do this. Otherwise, you could get attacked and lose all your data. The CSOs, the C-level guys are like, okay, so this number's supposed to be this number, and they know that, but it doesn't connect to their business understanding as well. And when you connect it to their business understanding, that it changes how their acceptance is.
So your response to them usually contains video?
Video, electronic information, physical data, everything. I mean, you know, I've brought servers into exit meetings before, or you know, videos of the events, or you know, being able to go through and show them standard kind of pen test reporting and pictures and all that stuff, as well as the timeline to root or the timeline to critical asset data. But I also paint that in the context of branding it against their company, because the more branding they see, the more aware it's them. They can't kind of ostrich head in the sand. You know, brand it to be them, and then you show them the breakdown of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The slide's going to be available online.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
Before you begin a physical attack, what kind of information do you disclose about what you'll be doing to the client?
I tell them everything.
Okay.
Absolutely. I will tell them everything. As a matter of fact, I will tell the security guards to look for me. And me, I will give them my picture and tell them to look for me, and I'll high five them on the way into the office. I'm serious, man. Like, I try and be as open as I can about that, because then that means, and you tell them that up front, like, I'm going to tell you everything I'm going to do it and when I'm going to do it. Watch for me. Because then you show them that even when they're on extreme and high alert, they can't defend against a real attack. And it makes it that much more impactful. But that's a great question. I mean, it's a lot of people go, oh, I'm going to be secret, sneaky, like, don't worry, I'll get my information. Ha ha. Why? Tell them. You'll get it anyway. Yeah.
What do you do if a company is concerned that you'll piss off their employees or you'll contaminate the culture? Here's our situation.
Mm-hmm.
We're a defense contractor.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a bunch of baby boomers who've been around for a long time. Some of them have classified access. They follow pretty much all the rules.
Sure.
We have Gen Y contractors. These guys are retired.
Mm-hmm.
Engineers. They want to be connected and whatnot. And they don't want their attitude is, as soon as my access to email, I'll do something.
So
How do you find these people who are used to having unfettered access?
More like how do you deal with a company that doesn't want to offend its own employees and create
So my uncle always told me, don't make waves, right? But there's ways to window people to explain to them that the ones that are championing this rebuttal can be the people who champion securing it. So there's usually some sort of voice, corporate voice, that says this will be accepted if you bitch about it, right? I mean, there is. It's there. You just got to find it. And then once you find that voice, you connect to that voice and you make them the target of the test. Hey, look, because you used Gmail, our whole company got compromised. Let me bring you into the meeting and show you. Hell, let me take the tester who's doing it and put you two in a conference room and show him how he's reading your Gmail to get your passwords to steal our source code. They'll stop. I mean, they'll actually get connected to it, because a lot of the times they just don't realize the risk. They don't understand why that could hurt someone. And you just need to kind of tweak them a little bit and say, okay, you know, get in the ring, let me show you. Because this is what we have to go through. And then it's either stand up for the company or let us get hacked. And if it's let us get hacked is your philosophy, then you probably shouldn't work there. So, well, thank you guys. I don't want to cut into anybody else's time. I'll be around.